What would a social enterprise look like devoted to arts education for kids in jazz and community engagement? Well, about 20 years, I decided to embark upon that journey, and I had no idea. But I realized that it started back in 1955, before I was even here, with my parents who met at the University of Michigan and decided to get married, an interracial couple. Over half of America, it was still illegal to be married. And my parents decided to move ahead anyway. My mother was summarily divorced by her parents, and my father, on the night of their marriage, was hauled down to the precinct. They subsequently decided that they would move to Canada, where my father would pursue a professional career in football. And he thought, even though the Green Bay Packers had asked him to come on board, that he would have a better life there for his soon-to-be family. So I realized that my dream all along was to have a world, and maybe have a world that was a little better for my parents. So really, Jazz House Kids is a tribute to them, and hopefully, along the way, I've accomplished it with a lot of help. But you know, Jazz House Kids was, my life was complicated already. I was working in the law department at Prudential. I was moonlighting as a jazz singer. It's far away from my aspirations as a lawyer. I was touring nationally. I was playing every club and bar I could, playing with all the musicians I could play with in Washington and New York and in between. And I had the thrill of touring internationally and really realizing how global this music was. It was a thrilling time. I was a recording artist, and I was making that thing that the young people in the audience probably don't know, called CDs. But at the same time, WBGO Radio, the great radio station in the state, asked me to do a program for kids and their parents. I thought that was a terrible idea, awful, and terrifying. So I kind of went ahead and did it anyway. And I found it was really thrilling. And there was somebody in the audience, luckily, who saw more in me than I saw in myself. And they invited me to come into the schools in Newark and do that assembly program. And so there I went with all my fantastic professional musicians that were playing all over the place, getting them up at 8 in the morning, and we did the Jazz House. And we built it, the kids put on their tool belt, and every day we built a new Jazz House. You know, I knew I was a person who colored outside the lines, and when I was younger, I thought that was really inconvenient. Because building the Jazz House, now in its 17th year, was a lonely pursuit. I was living in a tiny apartment, working largely by myself on something that I didn't know what it was, where it was going, how I was going to get there, and how I was going to pay for my life. But my mother stood behind me and so many more, and I just kept going. But my friends were sailing ahead. Every time I would get the monthly magazine from college, they were getting a new promotion, moving on to new things, discovering new things in science, making money. And here I was in my tiny apartment on that thing that I didn't know what it was. But I was committed. So I decided to employ the power of the we. That's the first tool I'd ask you to put in your tool belt. We. Even when there's no we, there's still a we. So we built a board. Well, first we incorporated. We built a board. We started to put programs together. We studied the terrain of arts education. We did programs wherever we could. We learned from everything that was in front of us. We put a name on absolutely everything. Because the more you can brand something, the more you can see it. Not even others, but yourself. And we just moved along. We started to gain supporters. We started to gain people who believed in this mission, who stood behind it, and helped even when I didn't quite know what we were doing. So Jazz House Kids continued to blossom. And when I married my husband, bassist Christian McBride, he put everything into it as well. We put our time, our talent, every relationship, our resources, and much more. And we studied the trends because times were changing. Arts education was being left behind. And in doing so, they were leaving kids behind. Schools, more and more, didn't have a program or had a poor program, a pull-out class, nothing at all. And there were kids, extremely talented, ready to explore, and they didn't have the place to bring their best selves, their creativity. That's a phenomenon I've never been able to understand. I mean, nothing drives change and advancement more than creativity. And nothing drives creativity more than the arts. But yet our schools were abandoning the very tool that made that all possible, not just for arts, but almost all innovation. So there was becoming a greater and greater place for Jazz House kids. And at the same time, our families were in need of a safe haven, a place to bring their kids, a place to challenge them, a place where they could meet people unlike themselves, a place that would set high standards, bring in top quality educators, a place that would bring community together, to let them fail, to succeed, to get up again, to collaborate, to take a solo. All of those things happen naturally on the bandstand. I mean, in jazz, if you've watched this music, it's the only place I know where an 8-year-old and an octogenarian can actually get on the stage together and do something positive. It was actually a place, and it is a place, that's combating a lot of the struggles happening with who you are and your identity, and all of that's out there saying what you're supposed to look like and how fun your life is supposed to be each and every day. But at the Jazz House, it gets real. It doesn't matter if you come in on your feet, take a bus, or your parents drive you in a Tesla. Because when you get to the bandstand, we're all equal, and we're all just trying our best. So I really loved that notion. And others in the community started to love it too. And that's when we saw people coming together. So as this trend was happening that moved arts from just this little arts enrichment to now being front and center in what I think is a powerful anecdote today, thankfully, a lot of supporters came. And with them, they brought their time, their energy, their creativities, their hopes and their dreams, their money. They helped establish the first Jazz House at Sharon Miller, the second one when we moved to the Salvation Army, and the third one where we are now on Bloomfield Avenue. We couldn't do it without those wonderful people. And so, if you've seen us today, you've hopefully seen the Montclair Jazz Festival reaching 15,000 people, 60,000 online, as a powerful anecdote to change and to community. And that's what I've invested my life in, but it hasn't been a pursuit alone. So I say in closing, to all of you people out there that are thinking about harnessing your entrepreneurial spirit, go ahead and do so. Because in the words of Chica Power, our program for our young women, go ahead and rise and improvise, because we're gonna be here watching, and we know you'll make our world a better place. Thank you.